Asia Pacific with Dr. WERNER KNOBEN. He's a senior partner of DETECON Asia Pacific, has been with DETECON for 6 years. Yeah. So DETECON Asia Pacific head office in Bangkok for up to 17 years already, and then we did a lot of work in Asia Pacific. And then the idea of the today's session is just one thing we would like to introduce about the company, what we did for the project, who are our clients in Asia Pacific, include the regulator and operator. And then I also would like to introduce Dr. KNOBEN here today. He will present two topics, one is quality and another one is network. I will give you the name card if you want to ask anything, or I will also send you the slides.
Good, then I take over. I have to, what do I have to do? Just speak in it? Okay. Good, now it works. Good, thanks. First of all, my name is WERNER KNOBEN. I am a bit stranger in this regulatory business because from my education I'm neither economist nor lawyer nor technical guy. I'm a mathematician. Nevertheless, I started already during my studies to look into projects coming from the network area with regards to network modeling, cost modeling, and things like this. That was a mathematician in me, but I quickly started jumping into all the other regulatory and particularly also into the wholesale area. Cover today's entire regulatory and wholesale range, what you usually have in companies, and also what you have in regulators. One of my most favorite hobbies, is this one, auction strategy, spectrum auctioning. I am happy to say that I got meanwhile more than 10 licenses for operator in spectrum auctions, in bidding processes, which is quite a big challenge. And we also started to work for regulatory authorities with these regards, that we set up auctions, spectrum auctions, and makes the entire auction design and up to conducting the auction with everything around this auction, the electronic auction system, etc., etc. Good. From my business background, I started with Deutsche Telekom. This is a German incumbent operator. For them, I did nearly 8 years the regulatory strategy, was doing exactly the opposite what you are doing. I was fighting against the regulator and not for the regulator. Nevertheless, starting with DETECON, the picture changed. Knowing the nasty incumbent tricks was always very helpful to support regulatory authorities and to give them related advice. I started my job with DETECON in Germany first. The German office is responsible for the entire world. We are having projects on all continents, and with this I work on all continents. From Southeast Asia up to South America, USA, everywhere, Africa. I moved over to the Bangkok office around nearly a year ago, and I'm focusing right now here on the Southeast Asian area. Good. A bit to DETECON. We are part of Deutsche Telekom, therefore it was quite close for me to jump from the regulatory authority department to Deutsche Telekom to the consulting arm. Deutsche Telekom is one of the biggest players worldwide with regards to ICT. It's the biggest in Europe with approximately meanwhile only left 240,000 employees. When I started with them, it was far more, but yeah, due to cost efficiency programs, etc., the number of employees, which are mainly busy in the fixed networks, went drastically down. DETECON is one of the subsidiaries. As mentioned, I started everything here in Cologne, where we are serving the solution as an expert team the entire world. We are having offices in the States, all over Southeast Asia. The most southern one is in Johannesburg in South Africa. And we are coming from a merger of DETECON and Diegel. Diegel is a quite old consulting house in Germany, founded in 54 of the last century. DETECON was founded in 77 last century, brought both together, and started initially to bring the regulatory and technical know-how from Europe to Africa, and then from there we expanded all over the world. Good. Southeast Asia. Here we have our main office in Bangkok. We have a second main office in Beijing, and several branch offices. One in Nepal, in Indonesia, in Brunei is the newest one, and we have the office is not too big. We are around 50 people working there. Around 10 of them are regulatory experts, because regulatory and wholesale is one of the biggest business we have here in Southeast Asia. And the second big business, that are the other ones, is the technology. Everything around technology, strategy, implementation, as well as the entire business side. That's what we are covering. Good. What are we doing with regards to regulatory? To be honest, everything. We are developing sector reform strategies from strategy level up to the implementation. That means we're writing the laws, the bylaws. I myself, I wrote the telecommunication law in Turkey. And I developed the bylaw for data interconnection and SMS interconnection in Nigeria, and did these things also in a couple of other countries. We are quite active with regards to competition law. Whenever it comes to anti-competitive conduct, we usually, in most cases, help the operators. Particularly, this is a very, very famous one in Europe, where the European Commission heavily fights against anti-competitive conduct, particularly of the incumbent operators. As mentioned, coming from Deutsche Telekom with lots of subsidiaries, we are still helping them. Then, on the other side, regulatory policies, procedures, the entire program, from technical, that means things like numbering, but also commercial things, tariff policies, tariff regulation, market analysis, S&P designation, related remedies, up to new regulatory challenges, fixed mobile convergence, everything which is resulting out of it, VoIP regulation, NGN, NGA, etc., up to the OTTs, which is one of the topics today. Good. Where, just to give you a bit of overview picture, that are not all the regulators we work for, it's just a small overview. This shows already we are quite active also on the regulatory side or on the regulator side, often our support worldwide, which gives you a quite good overview what are the guys doing on the ground, and we can also quite easily compare what's going on. Good, a bit here from the region, what we are doing here. Just a couple of topics, what we are doing in several countries. For example, Thailand, I myself was responsible to support one of the big operators there to get the 3D license last year. We are currently in the preparation for the 4D licenses for them. Nevertheless, we have from the Spectrum Master Plan. I was doing this around 2 years, 2 to 3 years ago. Broadcasting policies, that means we developed the entire dominance framework in the broadcasting area. We are active, as mentioned, in Cambodia, Bangladesh, Brunei. We also worked a bit here in Malaysia. Not with all operators, but with a couple of them. And therefore, this is a bit the overview. To complete the picture, Myanmar, Singapore, Philippines, Vietnam, and Indonesia. Currently, I myself, for example, am developing the privatization of the state-owned operator NPT, and trying to guide them out of the old ministry world into a private environment by legal organization, by development of new policy frameworks, up to, but this is not done by me, this is done by a colleague of mine who is doing the technical implementation. That means the entire network has to be updated. It's a very small network anyway, but it has to be done.
Can I ask a question?
Please, sorry.
With regard to your Singapore ITE with the network resilience review, what kind of review do you need with the IDA?
I show you a long story. This is, I have 2 topics for you.
Okay.
This is exactly the network resilience, and the second one is OTT. The network resilience, the slides I've mainly stolen from this project in the IDA, but this is actually a very popular one. Opposite to many other projects, this is usually the one which tremendously pays off for the regulator. Unfortunately, I haven't found a single country where, when we did these network resilience audits of the operator, where we haven't found some tremendous gaps. So also in Singapore, there was not a single one of them who had proper network resilience. We had a first project with this regards last year, and you might have read in the newspapers that IDA issued the biggest ever fine in Singapore. We did a second project, and I will not tell too much right now because it's not published yet, but there are also coming quite heavy fines out of this project because the operators have not implemented what they promised. This is what I mean with paying off. The charges for us are usually very, very small compared to the fine we're getting in. Therefore, these are really projects which, first of all, are worthwhile for the country. You might know in Singapore they had in the last 1.5 years 2 big network outages, which should not happen. And if you do a proper audit and you find the gaps, then you can exactly initiate something to do something against this. The fine is not the important one. The important one is that you find some measures and recommendations how we can change the networks. On the other side, it is usually very, very beneficial for the operators because with this they suddenly get a neutral perspective on the network. The usual thing is if you look too long onto something yourself, you're getting blind. You don't see it anymore. Yeah? And there are really little things. Once you have detected them, it's easy to change, easy to fix. But if you don't fix, you usually run quickly in quite disastrous. And for example, the last Singapore case, most of the operators in Singapore are actually very good. They are state of the art. They only forgot, for example, in this case what they had last time, that the cables coming into a building came all through the same duct. So the entire network was resilient, but this duct was not. And unfortunately, exactly this duct started burning. With, nearly 1.5 days outage for some operators. Nationwide outage. And this is exactly a pretty good thing. Good. Yeah, then let's jump straight away in it. What I would like to tell you a bit of some recent projects we did. On the one side, the network resilience. On the other side, the OTT regulatory approaches. Two very, very different things. One very technical, one a bit technical, but mainly a complete and innovative topic when it comes to regulatory approaches. Those are recent projects. Resilience is something we are very regularly doing worldwide. The last one was really here in Singapore, where we support IDA. The OTT study, which I go a bit into, comes from Bahrain. This was the last project, these guys asked us, we see something happens, we see somehow the money is going out of the national markets, our operators are complaining, what shall we do? And we developed in the framework of the study some guidance what they can, in what direction they can think. We haven't developed the actual solution, but we at least get some strategy overview what further to study. Good. Hoppala. Good. So, business continuity. Business continuity, you have a given framework. We have lots of ISO regulation. If you follow all these things, you're already quite close. Nevertheless, with regards to network industries, you usually do not have many proper international standardization and regulation. Therefore, the network's resilience is usually a bit of a missing gap. And you need usually extremely good national regulation to exactly cover what you want. The problem with business continuity is you hardly need it. You need it maybe if you are very unlucky once a year, twice a year. However, it costs you a bunch of money. So therefore, if a regulator jumps in this topic, you always have to see both sides of the medal. Yes, we need the national security, we need the networks up, but on the other side, your colleagues from the tariff regulation, they are very interested that the retail tariffs are going down. They are having cost models, etc., etc. This is a bit of a contradicting target. The commercials want it cheap. The technicals want it very, very well developed. Everything should be covered. Okay, this is a bit the standardization framework around. When you do these kinds of audits, we are usually covering several fields. The first one, this is a bit of a picture from a mobile network. The first field, we are usually looking at the network itself. And to tell a bit about the project in Singapore. Once IDA asked us to execute this project, First of all, we defined what area shall we look at. You have several areas which you can jump in. The first one is the most important one is really the network area. If something is going wrong there, you can have processes in place that will never help. So, and therefore, this is usually the core part of each and every network resilience project. That we are going out to the operators. We are sending them questionnaires. Please send us documentation, etc., etc. Then we first of all get a big overview. How does the network look like? What's the network architecture? And also already a first idea in what network resilience concepts are implemented. But nevertheless, documents usually don't tell you everything. And sometimes, and not only sometimes, it's standard what we are doing out. We are visiting the operators, we are checking their networks, we are going in a country like Malaysia is far more difficult because you're far bigger. Singapore is relatively easy. You have a very small network for each of the network operators. Nevertheless, even here in Singapore, in Malaysia, you can concentrate on very important points and can check how is the network resilience there. And exactly these examples, what I told you before with regards to the duct, all the cables came through the same duct into the building. This is no network resilience anymore. And this is very cheap to solve. This is a funny thing. But these things you cannot see on paper. You have to go to the site. You have to check exactly these things. Where are the cables coming? How is the network there set up, etc., etc. And everything is then documented and compared to what these guys are usually reporting to the authority. Good. This is the one side. The other side is, we have not only the network, we also have the application layers, etc., etc. Here is the same principle. If you only have one SMSC, that means the switch which is responsible for transporting and sending SMS. If this fails, then you don't have SMS up anymore. So therefore also here we have the application layer, usually lots of things to check, which you where you have to go even one step deeper into the network. By, on the one side, checking the network infrastructure. However, you can also on this application layer do software-based solution to get or to achieve network resilience. So also this, that means we are not only looking how many machines are there, how are the cables to the machines, we are also looking into the application layer, how is the IT infrastructure, the OSS, BSS. These things itself are usually not so critical, but how are they interacting with the applications? And here you have different areas where we have to look at topology, capacity, failover functions. All these things have to be checked and are checked.
So for the IDMs, you actually go into the operator.
We went to Singtel's 101. And did for each of them a complete network audit.
After the section of the levels, when you, of course, IDA is the way of my IDA is.
I cannot tell you names, but I can tell you that two were very receptive. They welcomed us and showed us not 100%, but 90. The remaining 10% were up for us to close. There was one operator who stated very, very early when we started contacting them, I have a corresponding audit, I have a business continuity management audit. Every year I'm certified, you don't have any rights to come here. So, we needed the mandate from the regulator, from RDA, that they push these guys a bit. At the end of the day, we got approximately 50% information from this operator. Unfortunately, this was exactly the operator who caused network outage. Therefore, particularly these things we were able to see and could, on the one side, give them a couple of recommendations. And as mentioned, the other operators, they really took away a lot. It is not only that we are then going and presenting the results to the regulator and don't have the upgrades anymore, at least. This is not the way it works. We have to rely on the operators. And if we just go to them, get the information out of them, and then we say goodbye, it will never work in the future again. So, therefore, if we are getting the information and we are going back and presenting these guys, so there are your gaps. Then give them free of charge a very, very valuable impact where they can change, and usually with small little measures improve. But on the other side, we also give the regulator a very, very good indication. These are the crucial areas. These are the areas where the operators haven't looked at. Yeah, and as mentioned, this is a bit the entire picture. The way it works, the first thing is, we are sending usually questionnaires out. Depending what kind of audit we are doing, depending on the type of operator, we have sometimes specific audits only for the core network, sometimes specific audits only for radio access networks, or the entire audit. And we are looking at different kinds of area. That means network resilience, business continuity, which is a bit more into the processes, and the infrastructure, which we are. Good. The results of it are usually quite big reports with some summary areas where we have different, depending, as mentioned, on the audit, scoring, reflecting, for example, how good is the mobile network topology, what is, for example, technical procedures and processes, with regards to business continuity, infrastructure, etc., and we are doing scoring for all of the operators. This one is, for example, not coming from Singapore. This is from an African operator who was actually not that well prepared. The usual thing is what we find here in this region, particularly Singapore. The ranking is quite high. There are a couple of gaps which are really quite easy to close. Good. The areas where we look at, as mentioned, the disaster prevention, which is exactly the network resilience. Once you have network resilience in place, the network, or the likelihood that the network will fail in a case of disaster. I cannot prevent the disaster itself, but I can prevent that the network acts too nasty on the disaster and just fails. If I have a good resilience in place, if I have a good geo-redundancy, etc., in place, then the likelihood, in case, for example, you have a heavy storm, you have a flooding, that in this case the network fails, is quite small. So this is usually the first and most important one. If you don't have this in place, forget each kind of disaster recovery. Everything else with regards to disaster recovery itself is far more difficult. What we usually also look at is, beside the network part, is other different solutions in case the network fails. And this was, for example, also one thing you could see in Singapore. The network failed, but there was nothing in place. This is the next important step. If something really happens, and you can imagine the course last time was just a burning cable. If, for example, many switches burn, it might take weeks to get the technology replaced. If only one operator is affected, it's fine. But even if it's only one, what are you doing with the customer? They might be out of service for weeks. Here we need also some good solution how to react with this. So what we looked, for example, in the Singapore case is as a disaster recovery in really bad cases, one operator is for a long time down. Could it be possible to have national roaming on the other networks? The other alternative where we looked at is a pre-provisioning of SIM cards. That means each operator duplicates the SIM card they have and give it to the other operators. So with this, you have, as a network operator, the possibility, once you see a network fails, that you take the SIM cards you have from the other operators and give it to your customers for the time when the network is down. We are not speaking here of 3 hours network outage. We are speaking here of really severe outages. And for this, even, you have to be prepared. And as mentioned, try to prevent, but in case something really drastic happens, also be prepared that you have a good alternative. So in Singapore case, we found this is a good and usually quite cheap way of doing it. The national roaming is a possibility in case of disaster. However, the national roaming comes with massive additional capacity requirements. If you don't have at least 50-60% spare capacity in the network, this one will not work. So the SIM cards we also analyzed. With regards to the SIM cards, the clear statement from our side to the government in Singapore was, don't do it. There is no way that you, on the one side, get the SIM cards all the time. The processes behind are a disaster, and the costs behind are tremendously high. And you have to have the network capacity in place as well. This does never pay off. So this is the most secure measurement you can have, but this is so expensive that even in a rich Singapore you couldn't implement this. Nevertheless, besides these measurements, there are usually other standard measurements you can also do, and depending on the country, depending on the discussion with the regulator, we are usually looking in different kinds of areas. Good. A project. After the audits, after looking into different kinds of disaster prevention, disaster recovery, usually ends with a set of recommendations from our side. This is not Singapore, this is an African audit. Here, for just to give you some ideas, update resilience code and also the corresponding regulatory frameworks we have there in place with regards to network resilience. We showed them how that means we went through the legal side went through the corresponding bylaws and identified the critical parts. And yeah, particularly this was very helpful for the regulatory side. Several other kinds of issues also on the regulatory side were identified, where we gave some clue how to get this resolved. And last but not least, I told you there was not a single project where we haven't found quite drastic issues with the operators. And usually, there was not a single regulatory authority who has not used the material against the operators. If you are not punishing, then they will never do this. They will never improve their network. In this area here, it's still quite okay. The network operators are quite fine. In other parts of the world, it's far more worse. And when we're speaking of Africa, for example, to get these guys to change something, we need a good fight. As mentioned, this was usually the return from the operator was usually quite high with regards to fines that project costs here were usually found. That means when it comes to disaster recovery, network resilience, what we're usually looking at is exactly the entire chain with the agreement of the regulator, exactly what field are they interested in. The history shows in many cases we are asked far too late. Why did the customers in Singapore have to suffer if they would have thought these things a little bit earlier? This could have been prevented. And therefore, this is usually a very, very good and project where you have a really big impact on the customer experience. You really can prevent a lot of outages, and this is it's really something which definitely will save us. Good. Before I go ahead, maybe some additional questions on network resilience, these kind of projects.
The thing that we're really interested in understanding, but you already answered it, is about how the operators fit. You only, so in Singapore they only have 3 operators.
Yes.
And you implement all the 3.
And
did they provide the reports online or did they publish it?
this is, to be honest, purest business secret of the operators. How their network looks like is something you cannot publish. But the corresponding results coming out of it, they will be published. That means IDA will start updating things on their side. The financing is coming as well. And they will, I think, give the operator quite good picture of what they want. Knowing a couple of Malaysian operators, I only fear one, to be honest, that he would be really resistant. I do not say who. Starts with A, and everyone else, to be honest, is humble enough to accept this. And I doubt that you really would get massive problems from all their products. And therefore, it is, as mentioned, the important thing is there are two different ways to start these kind of projects. Either you have an incident, so then the regulator is angry, calls us, and just sends us to the operator. This is the Singaporean case. We have lots of other countries where there's an understanding of a regulator who somehow doesn't know how good the operators are in disaster recovery, in business continuity. And they just ask us, less with the intention to fine, but more with the intention to help and to get things done. So if you introduce us in these kind of sense to the operators, the perception is very, very positive. It's all over the world, always the same. For them, it is free of charge network outage. This is the best thing what can happen. We tell them what is wrong. We tell them also, for example, if they're in a transitional phase, how to develop the networks. If they are ordering this in the framework of a project, they have to pay for it, and usually quite a lot. And this is really an advantage. And if you sell it like this, and if you are not refusing to give them related information back, then they are usually absolutely fine. We had also some experience with regulators where they sent us for data collection, for the audit, but they kept all the information for themselves. This is a very negative way from my perspective. It worked once because when we started, we told the operator after everything is over, you get the information back, but we were not allowed. We have one example where we did it twice. The second time was tremendously unsuccessful because every operator told us, why shall I spend lots of my time with you, but I don't have anything, or I don't get anything out of it. So if you are cooperative with the network operators, even if you find them, it doesn't matter. But if you allow proper feedback to all sides, then everyone is happy. This is really the experience, and then they usually don't have a problem.
What are which other countries you can find in Singapore, South Africa?
We have done in more than 20 African countries. We have a couple of countries around here in this area where we did this. We are starting the first one in Myanmar right now. We had very, but only for one of the operators because they didn't want the general one, they only wanted to check one. This was a very challenging one because we have an office in Beijing and have lots of technical colleagues there as well. But we also send a couple of Germans, and the language barrier is very, very big. Chinese is really the dominating language, and the English ability is not very big. Therefore, this was quite challenging. Nevertheless, it was done, and this was a very, very, very big project. You can imagine these guys have at that time when we did this 600 million customers. It was 2 minutes. Big network, possibly this project with this regard. We did it in a couple of European countries where the Europeans are a bit different from the rest of the world. They are far more resistant. But the good thing is they have a stronger regulator in the sense that they are just joined the meetings, that they came with official documents, with even court decision that they were able to enter whatever premises they wanted. I never had this kind of experience in this country, or this region here, that you really can formal documents and let me in. Usually everything is here far more voluntarily, but as mentioned, particularly Eastern European operators were very, very resistant guys knew why they had to do this. But if it always depends where you are. As mentioned, the things, particularly here in this area, most of the operators are pretty well. Good. Then we look a bit into the second one, the OTT. Good. Everything is changing. This is currently, unfortunately, the picture. What we usually have is the former growth, what we have, or what we had in the markets, is unfortunately, particularly for regional or for the national players, over. Usually a shrinking process starting. Yeah, the reason why you have currently this trend is mainly based on a technology change. We started with PSTN world. In PSTN, it was hardly possible to decouple the service from the network. The network operator who offered you a PSTN line, that was very, very challenging for other operators to use this. There are possibilities with unbundled loop, with data bitstream, things like this. Nevertheless, you had to hand over infrastructure. Very complicated. Today, the network and the service are decoupled. That means having the internet up and using the internet as a service providing platform, now everyone worldwide can offer a customer here in Malaysia a service, whether he has a company in Malaysia or not. And this is exactly the trick behind, and this is exactly the basis of all the regulatory challenges we currently have. You have to regulate, in the worst case, companies who are not even located under your legal environment. This is a challenging one. The other influence from particularly these pictures, you guys usually have pretty tough targets to retire for the operators. We have things like broadband targets. They should roll out broadband network, fiber infrastructure, etc., etc. However, a lot of the money they previously earned is not going to the revenue. It's going out of the country. So this is exactly a big issue, because particularly these targets are also currently used. The possibility to finance a fiber network rollout, I haven't done a calculation for Malaysia. I did a calculation for Germany. It was 80 billion euros. To finance something like this, you need somehow strong operators. If this is the case,
Dr. Werner, just now can you explain the sentence, the pure broadband business case is getting unviable? Can you explain it?
Yes, very simple. What is the willingness to pay for access compared to what is the willingness to pay for services? So, coming from Germany, we have a fixed network penetration from close to 100%. Everyone has a fixed network. We have a broadband penetration, which is comparably high, 80-90%. Fixed network connection or internet connection is meanwhile treated cheap, because customers are not willing to pay for it. It is there. It is natural. And I do not feel when I'm in Germany that I have it. I am feeling it when I'm in Africa that I don't have it. I know the value of it. A German does not. So, nevertheless, for what are you willing to pay? You are willing to pay for movies because you enjoy it. You're willing to pay for games. You're spending time with it. But you're not spending time with an access line. It is a necessity for people, but it is nothing which you experience as a wonderful thing where I want to spend a lot of money for. The wonderful thing where I spend the money for is exactly the service on top. So, and this is exactly, also one, this coupling from service and network, and here, the viability of the pure broadband line. People, as mentioned, if I don't offer them a good service on top, I'm not willing to pay a high price for the access. This was different, also different before. Everyone was very aware before we had mobile phones, you need an access line. People knew the value of this. But the young generation, particularly the young generation today, forget a certain thing. You grow up, or they're growing up with this, they know they just plug in something, but what is behind the wall, they don't know. And the value is mentioned, this is exactly the thing. The willingness to pay, the perception of these things changed. And therefore, this is exactly the reason for this fact. Pure broadband provider who are doing nothing else than providing broadband start struggling. Because, as mentioned, why should I pay for it? This is in Europe a very, very bad phenomenon because these guys are very spoiled. This is a bit better in this part of the world. It is very good in Africa. There people know the value. However, these things you will see over time also much more change in Malaysia as well. Good. So when we look at the usage, now we're going a bit away from fixed, we're going a bit into the mobile world. The mobile voice and SMS, certainly yes, they are still in quite high usage. These figures are not coming from here. These are array figures. There you still have maybe 100% voice usage. If you are looking at the picture here in the Asian area, this would be already files. However, these are the classical mobile services. Then we start with OTTs, which are getting stronger and stronger. What you see here, you have a negative trend from 11 to 13. The bars getting smaller. However, with regards to the OTTs, the trend is exactly the opposite. People are using more and more instead of SMS. They started with email very early, so it was not very practical, but meanwhile we have IP messaging, all these things, and they are getting more and more, particularly here, IP messaging, you see the growth. It is tremendous. And VoIP is getting more important. Meanwhile, video is calling starting. All these things which are not usually provided by the network operators itself, but provided by Skype, a line, a WhatsApp, etc., etc. If you're looking at the messaging, for example, in the development, in the past and in the future, the SMS was the 100% market. However, this will shrink quite heavily. The heavy shrink is you hardly see because the number of new messages which are generated with alternative media, with OTTs, is tremendous. So, and this here again shows you paid for this, this is free of charge. The entire business model is a different one. Yeah, with this, the result are exactly revenue losses on the network operator side. The classical services where I paid for are replaced by either very cheap or even free of charge services. And the tricky thing is the other side, regulation. We see this later on as well. However, somehow not balanced. We have the phenomena that your national mobile operators, they are paying tax. These guys, when they are sitting in the States, they are not paying tax in Malaysia. They are paying tax in the States, if at all. That means we have a shift also from tax payments away from national level, either to areas of the world where you don't pay tax. This is one phenomenon. In this case, it is just gone. That means this tax money doesn't exist anymore. Or you have to shift from the Malaysian national tax, which is certainly paid in the US or in Germany or wherever, where exactly these companies are sitting.
Dr. Werner, the tax evasion you mentioned, do you refer to the income tax on profit or on the service tax on this service provision?
I'm referring to the service tax.
Service tax.
The income tax you still have. People are still working in Malaysia, luckily. Yeah, all the money these companies are generating with OTTs. And if I am allowed to refer to Google, this is a lot of money which they are generating with your voice minutes, unpaid, but refinanced by advertisement. Yeah, it is exactly this is exactly one thing one has to understand. These guys are not doing it free of charge. It's just someone else who's paying it. The payment here is done by other companies who are doing advertisement. This is a completely different business model. Here, the end customer is paying. This is exactly one thing one definitely has to see. When you have the shift from here to there, the tax money will become smaller, unless you are a country which hosts lots of these providers. It depends where you are. If you're in India, if you're in the States, you're pretty happy about this trend. If you're in Germany, you are not really happy when you see this. I guess the situation in Malaysia is pretty similar to Germany. So the number of big operators on the OTT side who are hosting is minimal. So therefore, all these related taxes are paid somewhere else, if they are paid. They might also go to the Cayman Islands. They don't pay anything. We have on the other side one critical issue with regards to data security, privacy. If you had, or if we are looking in the old world, and here again we have the resilience is one example of it. Here you gave them clear rules. National player, if you want to be or want to have a license, these are the rules. However, these guys, as management are sitting not, most of them are sitting not in Malaysia. With regards to consumer rights, which is exactly my personal data, my privacy, and also security concerns. When I switch my landline off, I only use this as broadband. How do you do emergency calls? With Skype? That's not work anymore. How does, if you call the 112, which is connected to the corresponding center that the calls are coming to, how do they know where you are? The secret behind an emergency call is not that it is connected to the related center which is responsible. The secret behind an emergency call is that information where you are is transferred to them. Because if I'm having a heart attack and I cannot speak anymore, but I still can press 112, they will find me. So these things do not exist anymore. And the worst thing is, you cannot force them. How? The only thing how you can force them is you switch them off. But I would like to see what happens with the authority if you switch Facebook off. So these are exactly the big topics we have here in the field of OTTs. Money goes out. We have unlevel or uneven field. The network operators who are investing here versus OTTs who are not investing here but profiting here. And very, very simple things like data security, my personal rights, which might be risk, and other security issues. Good. The good thing, and I told you already, you will not become unemployed. It's getting worse. The trend is going on. The projection for the upcoming years with regards to the revenues, for example, is that we have currently 17% growth of the OTT revenues compared to worldwide growth of the infrastructure-based classical telcos of where you have the figure, it was very small, it was 2 or 3%, I have the figure somewhere. Therefore, you can imagine in a couple of years, the OTTs will overtake the classical players. The question further is, who's behind? Who is getting all the money? So, and the thing what you see is most of it goes mainly to 2 areas. I renamed Google to search, and we have on the other side everything which is related to cloud services, and they are currently exploding. This area is tremendously growing. They are relatively stable, small growth. The social medias are coming more and more. They're getting more important. And you have a couple of other areas. Depending where you are, online gaming, here is an issue area, for example. It is a very growing, strongly growing market. Online gaming is in Europe not so popular. It's more there. But you have VoIP, you have video, and all the other things. And on the other side, at least you have still today the paid mobile applications, which is rewarding for behind this. You have the infrastructure play. That means also they are operating as an O2T on their own platform.
Dr. Werner, can you explain cloud as an OTT service?
this is everything related to, for example, storage. I have on my phone a camera. I have Dropbox. So Dropbox automatically uploads my pictures. Everything is in the cloud. My Dropbox I have privately has 2 GB free of charge. Why do I use Dropbox? Because my company is using Dropbox and they are spending a lot of money for it. They are having for each of us a big account, and with this I got to know Dropbox. That's the reason why I use it. That means these guys, for example, all the things which are related to online storage, everything which is related to synchronization. You have your iPhone, you have your iPad, you have your iPod, everything is synchronized. For this, when this works, you need the cloud. Without cloud, no chance of synchronization. All these things are behind the cloud.
What about e-commerce value added?
E-commerce is, for example, things like Amazon. You have all this online shopping. Amazon. We have eBay, which is an auction platform. Everything which is somehow related that at the end of the day you get something physical back via hosting service or whatsoever. You are spending money for something. It's the inside Kuala Lumpur transferred to the internet, so to say, the shopping.
So, under your classification, all these actually are part of the OTT service?
Yes. Amazon, for example, is an application. It is working in the internet. It is IP-based service, therefore it is OTT. We have a bit development which is a bit in the direction that these guys here are going a bit away from the classical OTTs. In 2 directions. One side, Google, for example, is investing in network infrastructure in some countries. They are not doing it in Malaysia, but they are planning on doing it, for example, in the States and South America. But only minor. The bigger things which you see right now is that these guys having special contracts with the network operators. And that's the network operators for particularly the search engines Google is establishing the fast track beside the best effort transport. Google in the States, only in the States right now, States and Philippines, has a fast track. The previously existing net neutrality doesn't exist anymore in the States. Although Obama, when he was elected the first time, demanded tremendously and heavily in the United States, we always will have net neutrality. But unfortunately, he was not fast enough with the legislation. He only stated this, but it was not legally implemented. And with this, AT&T made the big deal with Google. And Google is paying them a fortune that Google is transported a bit faster than Yahoo. So this is a different kind of business model. And this is one thing, particularly where the policy has to look at. Because on the one side, yes, net neutrality is something we should have. But on the other side, if there are new business models evolving, for example, like the deal Google with AT&T, with the fast track, there's a big question mark whether we should stop this. Because this, or with this, AT&T got a big deal of money. But they lost on the other side, with the unwillingness to pay for the access. Okay, a bit on the way how do they survive if I and you are not paying for them? There's a Skype. How does the Skype survive? We have some services where it's a bit more natural. For example, Netflix. For Netflix, I'm paying. But how does Viber, WhatsApp, Line? How do they do it? So the way behind this, they are usually financing themselves in a different way as you are used to it. We started everyone started, maybe the youngsters not anymore, that you pay per minute. So you might already started with flat rate, voice flat rate, something like this. So nevertheless, you pay for voice. What you are doing in this area, usually, what's up starts, meanwhile, that you are paying for yourself. Now you're paying up front, depending on what country you are, in some countries up to 10, 15 US dollar. And with this, you have full service abuse rights until these guys are so clever to upgrade their application without interconnectivity between two releases. That means you cannot send someone in a new release a message anymore, so that you have to upgrade. Good trick. This is one thing for which you need policy. Do I, as a regulator, allow this? From my perspective, if I buy the usage rights for the rest of my life, but in 2 years later, they issue a new release, they do not force me to use this. They do not force me to pay for it, but they don't have an interconnection between one and the other. This is a very, very typical problem. The next question, for example, is Skype. Why can I not call Skype? There's no interconnection. Skype and mobile networks are not connected. However, you have a regulation in place worldwide that your national fixed and mobile operators have to interconnect. So that means, these guys are somehow outside. This one thing, for example, one definitely should start looking at. Interconnectivity of applications. The classical world that we have only the interconnection requirements for the infrastructure-based competitor you have in the market, from my perspective, is not enough. Why do I need, if I have Skype, also Line, also Viber, also however they are called, because none of them is interconnected. It's easy for them. They don't want. So, and this is another field, for example, where we have a big difference between the classical business model. But here also, some related regulation might be necessary. So, nevertheless, when I look at, for example, my Skype, if I do not buy Skype out, it is a free of charge service. How do they finance? And this is the most important word what you need to read more or less everywhere, advertisement. Wherever you are, you find some kind of advertisement. And this is exactly the reason, the way these guys are financing themselves. And for example, the communication layers are pretty small when it comes to or collection of advertisement. The star amongst them is the Google. They are making billions and billions of US dollar every year with the advertisement. And yeah, this is exactly the way how also the others started going exactly this way. Here you have your e-commerce, what we had before. Some examples. You have the classical one like Amazon, or online shop, so to say. We have the auctions, but we have also things like PayPal. That means online money is getting far more important, which is again an area where you should very, very carefully look at. If I give PayPal the right to access my accounts, but they are not dealing with it sensibly, they can easily steal everything out. So for this, and this is exactly this security, this data protection, this privacy, consumer protection area, we have to look very, very carefully in. Yeah, here again, this is a massive problem that these guys are not legally based in Malaysia. How do we catch them? This is a big question. And this holds more or less for all of them. Just one example with regards to data protection. Facebook had a big attack from the European Commission 2 years ago, 2 years ago, with regards to the ability of customer to delete the information. The way Facebook operated before was I press the delete button, but they haven't deleted it physically. All the data was still there. Later on you could reactivate everything. They just cut the links. And they never lost all the information they had about you, which they could then further use. So here again, the European Union is lucky, very, very strong organ who could issue a huge fine against them. What they did afterwards, they started at least for the European environment, follow this the principle that they really physically delete this data. When you guys are doing it here, they are not doing it. When I'm doing it in Germany, they have to. This is a bit the difference. But nevertheless, the job was the European example here on this shows if you're doing something, you can be quite successful. The question is only, Malaysia has 60 million customer, or how many people living in Malaysia? 87?
Malaysia population about 30 million.
30.
29,
The question is, what will Facebook do if Malaysia contacts them? Will they start laughing, 30 million, okay, I don't need you? Or are you big enough to make pressure on them? This is usually the question. Because as mentioned, depending what company it is, they might not even have an office in this country. That means you cannot really get them. However, the fine of the European Union was effective. So they had to pay. There was no way around. And they got them. And they got them only for one reason. Behind Europe, you have a couple of 100 million customers. So this was a very good argument. And the European Union, or Commission, better to say, had even to threaten Facebook. If you're not doing it, we are switching you off. So losing a couple of 100 million customers was a very direct impact and to follow. This is exactly the challenge of the smaller countries. From a Singaporean perspective, it's still quite okay. But if I'm speaking from Brunei or from other smaller countries, these guys are doing with them whatever they want. Here we are speaking of very, very big companies, with millions and millions of customers, millions and millions of US dollars, who are opposing the regulatory authorities of sometimes very small countries, and this is really quite big issue. Good. Then, what are usually the strategies of countries to deal with these guys? Currently, actually, there's not a single country worldwide who has a proper regulatory framework in place when it comes to OTTs. It is usually a bit of work around or work together with the operators, or on the other side, we have also the operators who just doing something, where in the worst case, you as a regulator might have to step in. The classical one, KPN in Netherlands tried for a couple of months to block Skype on their mobile phones. The regulator, Opta, was not really amused. They dragged them to court, they gave them a big fine, and KPN started letting them in again. Skype was on the mobile phones again. Please don't take me wrong, I'm usually quite negative with regards to OTTs. However, I'm on the other side also a friend of it. And I'm not a friend of over-regulation, but I'm also not a friend of under-regulation. Regulation is necessary, but it must be done wise. So therefore, the case Netherlands, the other examples here, I experienced it myself in UAE for 3 years, and I really had to suffer from these two guys who all the time, again and again, blocked Skype. It was very expensive to call home. Nevertheless, this is a typical tactic which can be done either from operator side, where you might have to step in, but which also can be used from the regulator side. If the OTT guys are not behaving, then the last possibility you always have, and you can always implement, is to just switch them off. That means this is a threat of a regulatory authority which you can implement first. If they are not following national laws, there might be a necessity to do this. Depending what service it is, it makes sense or not. Good. In UAE, we didn't have this example, but this example I already referred to in the States and in the Philippines. AT&T is charging Google for preferred transport. So this is exactly one thing, this area here, which you very, very carefully have to consider. This is something against net neutrality. That means you are generating, and if you are allowing this, you are allowing that there is the highway beside the normal street. If you are allowing it, then just make sure that the customer is not losing. If Google is losing money in this case, I don't mind. They have enough of it. But if the customer cannot use Google anymore, then you might have a problem. So, if we are going away from net neutrality, from my perspective, and also from the studies we did, you can do it in such a way that you do not have a net neutrality for big companies. That means the network operator charge for a better transport, but each and every customer has access to the same condition to the highway as well as to the small street. So if it's done in this way, then the customer is not suffering. This is the most important part. He has access to everything. But the operator might charge the OTT players quantity. And to be honest, a service, for example, like Skype, I'm sure they would be happy to contribute a bit here. They have subscribed. These groups, they need high quality. Why should they not pay for it? This group does only exist because the network operators over-provisioning. Without over-provisioning, it would not work. So, if they would offer them a highway, it might be a good solution. But as mentioned, this is one thing which carefully has to be considered. You have the first examples without regulation with AT&T. And the reason why FCC allowed it was exactly AT&T did not discriminate the customer, they discriminated the place. Not really discriminated, they allowed that there was a higher quality for one player, but each and every customer has the same access. This is important.
Dr. Werner, can I understand from you that the charge OTT provider for network use, the examples that you say globally, there are two examples, USA and Philippines. It's only happening in these two countries.
There it happens very successfully. You have lots of other countries where the operators are trying it, but they are not strong enough. You need to have a customer base, for example, like AT&T in the United States, with very, very wealthy customer before Google accepts to pay for the data highway. The Philippines, I do not have a clue how they manage this. I don't exactly know, but they manage. PTP there, Philippines, they manage. I know from my own experience when I was working with Deutsche Telekom, we tried this with the OTTs. And these guys were laughing at us. We, at that time, were not strong enough. It's getting now a bit different because Deutsche Telekom is active all over Europe and also has T-Mobile in the US. The customer base is meanwhile big enough that that Deutsche Telekom gets meanwhile the purchase power to go into this direction. Nevertheless, it is still, they're still struggling in these negotiations. And here, as mentioned, the crucial thing is from a regulator perspective. If you are a regulator representing a country with smaller operators, these guys will never have a chance to negotiate these things. In a worst thing, Google would say, who is Malaysia? And just would go away. So, your customer would not like this. So therefore, you might have to help them with corresponding regulation. That you, for example, actively introduce or go away from net neutrality, you actively introduce a data highway, but you're regulating the price. So that means AT&T had a pretty easy game because they had a big purchase power. I do not know the financial conditions behind, and I do not know whether or which party was stronger. But you always have the problem when you introduce this. You have to prevent, as usually the national players are the monopoly, that they overcharge. Yeah, that means TM is the big player here. If TM would be successful with such a contract with Google or with whoever, they would introduce the data highway. They might overcharge for this usage. This must be prevented. It should be a fair game. Yeah? This would be the consequence where you as a regulator would have to step in. Okay, we go away from net neutrality, but the financial conditions you are regulating. With this, you would allow TM to increase their revenues because they would then get wholesale revenues. On the other side, you would also protect the other companies from going bankrupt, and it's also a kind of consumer protection that the services remain affordable. So what we have very, very common is the partnering. Many operators are partnering with Line, with Skype, with online games, with whatsoever. It's a very good sales argument for the mobile operators or fixed network operators. We have the effect that own OTT services are developed sometimes, and we have some advanced integrated services, which here you need the higher security standards, you need better transport, things like this. That means that's exactly the higher value proposition, which is usually generated from the operators itself. This is my mobile phone, which is at the end of the phone, or not mobile phone, my mobile voice, which is at the end of the day also nothing as an OTT on themselves. Good. So now we are in the middle of the regulation. This is one thing where I started with. We always have two sides. We have on the one side, the network operators who are usually heavily regulated. The licensing, QoS are regulated. Impose interconnection on them, universal services obligation. We have, in most of the countries worldwide, consumer protection. You have national security related things, legal interception, emergency calls, things like this. And last but not least, the taxman is also in the world. For the OTT side, it unfortunately looks quite different. Licensing, in most cases, not required. Quality of service, not regulated. Interconnection, not required. Universal service, they do not even have infrastructure. Consumer protection, depends where they are. You have to rely on the countries where they are based. If they are somewhere based in a country without any kind of regulation, then you can imagine what kind of services come out. Legal interception doesn't exist. Or protective selling only exists usually in the country where they're active. This, for example, was one of the biggest issues 3-4 years ago, where you might know the story from UAE and Sony, who heavily fought against BlackBerry. The story behind was BlackBerry, the standard BlackBerry service was in such a way that the attachment was stored in Canada, and only if I pressed a button it was downloaded, but I could on the other side also send the message without downloading the attachment to someone else. So, legal interception was not working. The Saudis and the UAE guys did not like it at all. At the end of the day, they got also a bit help from the Europeans. Until RIM agreed, okay, for BlackBerry, we develop a special thing that in all the countries where we need to fulfill such an obligation, that you always have the data download, in any case. So, things like this, and the BlackBerry example is one of this, where in this case it was not the regulator, in this case were the national security agencies who were massively interfering to get this back. Yeah, taxation, okay, this is what we start with. Depends where you are, and depends where they are. Okay, this is a bit, yeah, the imbalance what we have today. The further thing, as mentioned, unfortunately, a lot of different things are coming together. We have the broadcasting, Netflix, other TV channels who are broadcast over the internet. We have mail services, we have financial services, communication, personal data storage. Each of these usually has their own agency, ministry, authority, whatsoever, who is dealing with this. Unfortunately, the internet is combining all these activities to one medium. The problem what we are seeing, we looked in a couple of countries and found usually big discrepancies between the corresponding legislation. They were sometimes contradicting, they were not consistent. And if these guys wanted to do something against someone, then the OTT player came to them and said, this is completely different, why can we do this? So, one thing which is definitely necessary, this is harmonization of everything. I'm not going so far that you need the super regulator whatsoever per country, but you need at least a good harmonization on the legal level, on the policy level, that the telecom regulator also understands the necessity there is something like data security, which is usually coming from somewhere completely from a different channel. That there, depending on the country, might be necessities in censorship. You cannot allow pornography, for example, in a standard TV channel on the internet. It's not possible. It must be censored. Yeah? And, who is dealing with this? That is the next question. It's not only the sometimes the misalignment of or the contradiction between some laws. It's also sometimes the contradiction between, or there's a misalignment between authorities. Who's responsible? Is it your job to do this regulation because the related thing is transported over the internet? This is a big question mark. Are you responsible, or who is responsible for this? And these are exactly the things one also has to look at. It's not only the regulation of the OTTs, of the national player itself, however, it's also in looking into the authority level and harmonizing there, going maybe a bit further to look into the legal level. Okay. So, from a couple of projects, a couple of lessons learned are also important. When we are starting with implementing now new legislation, and as mentioned, doesn't exist really much anywhere. Nevertheless, we are starting with this. The first countries are now digging a bit more deeper into the OTTs. The first part here is quite important. That's the OTTs. They're taking away something from the value chain. They're taking out some money because you have the separation of transport and the service layer. So this is the world as it is. This is the factum, and this is the thing the strongest regulator cannot change. This is the technology underneath, and this is what they're making out of it. We have on the other side, in more and more countries, a problem for the network operators. These guys lose money. So the question is now, is it time to intervene or not? Big question. Here, this is a question I cannot answer. Globally, here, this is definitely depends on where you are. For the principles I come later on, we have the funny effect sometimes. Usually, what you would expect is that if you have that the money is going out of the market, that it is going somewhere. But sometimes we even find the value is just destroyed. Revenues are going away from national operators, but no one else is getting them. Where's the money? The money is still with the customer, which is good. But this is nevertheless concerning. So we have, that's economic value is shifting. It's going away from national, it's going into the international level. We have the problem that infrastructure, unfortunately, is something very local, very regional, nothing international. So here, this is exactly the big issue. We have to get these things back together. The international activities with the local infrastructure. We see that the network operators are also developing strategies against these effects by either developing their own OTTs or by, for example, partnering or whatsoever. But there's one very, very important thing to learn. Not everyone will survive. So, and this is one lesson which is very difficult for particularly regulators to learn. You cannot protect everyone. Sometimes you have to let the company die. If their business model is not efficient, you cannot interfere, you cannot protect everyone. You must have the bigger picture into base your decision on a bigger picture, not on, okay, there's a small company dying. This is a very, very crucial one. Wherever I am, this is one of the most crucial arguments which is always coming in decision, but they are. And this is, as mentioned, not everyone will win. So, the consequence is exactly this one. Policy goals are more difficult to fulfill. The entire regulatory environment, what you saw before, is increasing. We have more areas to cover, not only the infrastructure area anymore, you have data protection, etc., etc. Therefore, these things are growing. So, the principles for the few times where we did the first policies in this direction, OTT, where we tried, or which we tried to follow based on these facts we have on the left side, is, on the one side, regulation should certainly secure national infrastructure. These guys are the enabler for all the OTTs. You must be always aware that the winner at the end of the day might be the OTTs, but without the national infrastructure it's not working. So therefore, we have to make sure that this is further working, that there further is an incentive to invest in the national infrastructure. This must be still something that is attractive for people to make business. If no one is investing in fiber anymore, you will never reach your goals, you will never get a society which has access to the internet as you would like. But on the other side, yes, this is protect your national infrastructure. But on the other side, don't kill innovation. If you start now panicking, and this is also unfortunately one thing, particularly in the Middle East, what you can see is that people or the regulatory authorities are panicking with regards to overdoing it with regulations on the OTT side. Certainly we need a level of regulation there, but do it wisely. If you start over-regulating, you will lose these guys. As mentioned, I do not say that OTT is bad. I cannot. They are having wonderful application, but we must balance these things very, very wisely. And the last one, as mentioned, is the most important one. As mentioned, not everyone will survive. Some business models are just not viable. So, and you must also have, or you must be brave enough to let these business models die. This is a very, very difficult one. As mentioned, I see many regulators struggling, particularly with this, because the press is against you. Why haven't you done anything? If you have the standing in the country, this will be something which you can easily also reflect because they are not efficient, because they did something wrong. And as mentioned, this is a very political one. And therefore, this is something where many regulators are struggling. Okay. I skipped this a bit. Let's skip this. I just want to have one word with regards to one action view, for example, where we are doing the first steps also. This is exactly pricing and costing and the data highway. The first regulatory authorities are starting to look at now supporting the way away from net neutrality. And they, as mentioned, they realized, okay, if we are allowing the operators to charge for the data highway to other companies, then we must also make sure that they are not overcharging. So, with this regard, we see right now quite more and more increasing trend that particularly costing is getting more important, and the underlying or the legislation behind it. That means the policies that introduce the possibility to go away from net neutrality, the related charging mechanism. You also specify with the regulator the quality of service parameter for the data highway, because also here you must do something. And the last thing what we also starting with right now is cost modeling. That means coming from the higher service level, what is proper charging from network perspective, network operator perspective, to the OTTs for transporting the service. And as mentioned, this is should be the last slide for today. Where I would like to show a bit, we have massive problems because there is no clear direction right now from any regulator. Everyone is struggling to do this. Yeah? And there are first soft steps in the direction to look a bit deeper in the OTTs with studies, with going a bit away from net neutrality, with also looking into the first cost models, into charging principles, etc., etc. None of this is right now live, but regulators are working on it. And this is a positive thing, because, as mentioned, more and more regulatory authorities realize the difficulty. It depends where you are. In Europe, the situation is right now really getting bad because due to this revenue shift, more and more of the network operators are struggling because, as mentioned, people are spoiled because they're not willing to pay for the access anymore. It's far more interesting to have a game than to pay for enabling the game. And therefore, this is a meanwhile a challenge which is quite it's getting stronger and stronger. Particularly, you will be one who will be very effective with it with regards to further developments. As mentioned, wherever we started looking at these things, you have to make some priorities. For Bahrain, for example, we gave also the regulator a catalog of action for further studies, for further investigation, to get a clearer picture. Some of these things we are doing ourselves, some are done by analysis. We have lots of other players who are also doing these things. Nevertheless, that's the first activity. Good. Yeah. With this, I would first of all ask the question whether you have questions.
Regarding the OTT TV, regulating OTT TV, do you know of countries or regulators in the world that have started to regulate OTT TV operating in the country?
Yeah, particularly Middle East.
Okay, if you put aside Middle East for a moment, I will talk about Middle East later.
So outside Middle East, not many.
Outside
Yes.
not many. One. Is there
the main reason why the Middle Eastern guys are getting a bit more active here is exactly the censorship. The censorship is the motivation for the TV and the broadcast regulation in the internet. We have a couple of things with regards to this. For example, we have some right management, which is less related to classical telecommunication regulation. It's a bit more broadcast and right regulation. For example, the World Championship right was given to companies depending on what broadcast media they used. Now you had one license for either OTT in the country or a related network player who did it IPTV based, or on the other side via DVB-T or classical cable TV. You have these kinds of regulation that is mentioned from a different perspective, from a right management perspective, exist.
But let's say we put aside the question of rights, distribution rights issue, purely from the fact that there are unlicensed OTT TV operators in the country versus the licensed broadcasters, the traditional broadcasters. Do you know of any countries other than Middle East countries that has started to regulate this OTT TV?
Regulate, I would not call it regulating, but you have the first initiatives with regards to to look at whether regulation is necessary. These things are pretty tricky because at the end of the day, in 30% always comes back to rights.
That's what I said. Put aside the question of rights.
The right, everything besides rights. Hard to find it. The reason for it is pretty simple. As long as you are not violating any kind of law, why should you forbid it?
There is this content suitability, because let's say in Asia, because the value, social value of Asia is quite conservative generally. Yes. There's this content that is, they do not conform the content code, for example.
This is what I mentioned with, this goes a bit into the direction of censorship. I do not want a TV channel to broadcast pornography whatsoever. This should be filtered out, definitely. These kinds of regulation exist. So you have bigger community who are looking into these things. As mentioned, but this is less connected also with the classical broadcast regulation. It is more censorship regulation that you forbid specific contents, and if the TV channels are not following who are broadcasted via the internet, restriction they are not licensed. With this, they primarily don't have a right to do something here. If they are not behaving well, then you must think of either what kind of penalty ever, because you have different possibilities. As mentioned, these more censorship-related things exist. Quite
Then can you explain about this, the Middle East, as far as you know, what about Middle East countries, which are the Middle East countries that have started to regulate OTT TV? I know they try to block this VoIP, for example, services in certain Middle East countries, but TV per se, are they any?
All they do. They are blocking quite a lot.
Which Middle East country is that?
I can give you a story where I have it in a different way utilized. I was responsible in UAE for introduction of bitstream access. I was fighting against Etihad on behalf of you. So, we wanted at that time bitstream access consisting of voice, data, and IPTV. Etihad didn't want to provide IPTV. So, what we did was we sent a marketing team to the Ministry of Interior Affairs, and they presented our retail product based on bitstream, which did not have the IPTV component. And this, the TV component was replaced by satellite. So we presented it. It looked really fancy. It looked really good. And then these guys asked us, okay, how do you do the TV? And we said, satellite. They're promoting it. The next day, we got a letter from the regulatory authority that Etisalat has to provide IPTV. Reason? In IPTV, they can block exactly these TV channels. On the satellite, they cannot. So we use this to get IPTV, but this shows that UAE is doing quite a lot with regards to this kind of content and with this regards of TV channels. They are just blocked. Yeah, and UAE is not the only one. You have in quite maybe in all Middle Eastern countries related regulation. UAE, Saudi, Oman has it. You have all of the worlds. You have it in the Northern African countries quite heavily, but also you do not have to go so far. Many, for example, pornography pages are blocked in Thailand. Thailand has a quite strict censorship. I never tried to accumulate it around, but how strong you guys are regulating Thailand? And the NSC, this is nothing so special.
You mentioned Middle East countries, you say UAE and Oman are among the ones that already started to regulate OTT TVs through regulation.
Through blocking.
Through blocking.
The only thing they do is they block. So it takes, you must behave quite a long time, very, very well, to go through this blocking as a TV channel. Yeah? Only very selected TV channels are allowed to go into the via the issue these guys are facing, to be honest, and that is something the telecom regulatory guys are required. You are, from your background, legal, technical?
Finance.
Finance. You might know the things like VPNs. Virtual private network connects my laptop virtually with Germany. I get a German IP address on my laptop and can watch whatever I want if there is no related regulation in place in the country where I'm just in. So that means if I'm in Thailand and I want to watch something which is censored, then I download VPN, install it on my laptop. We usually have to pay for it. Then we have this connection and you are having the full access to whatever service you want. So that means if you're just blocking TV channel, and unfortunately this is the way the Middle Easterners are doing it. They're just blocking the TV channel, but they forgot the VPN. Then you still have the full access to whatever you want to watch, but in a different way. So that means if you plan as a country to interfere against, for example, unlicensed TV channels, if you're planning to block them, then this is straight away connected with the VPN regulation. Because if you don't have a related VPN regulation in place, everyone is downloading a VPN and is watching it anyway. So, you see, you must understand the technology of, or the technical possibilities behind the internet quite well if you want to design this kind of regulation. As mentioned, in the old PSTN world, it was easy. The service and the transport was always connected. Today, everything is completely decoupled. You can even use things like VPNs, etc., to get virtually out of your country and to be virtually in the legislation of another country. which, particularly these things, makes the entire regulatory game even far more complex. Because, as mentioned, whenever I start my VPN, I am virtually under the legal environment of someone else, and not on you. And all these things, as mentioned, if you want to do these kinds of broadcast regulation, you, at the same time, when it should make sense, video-related telecom regulation, because then you have to also do something against VPNs. This is experienced by a further way from the Middle East. They are doing it half-hearted. They have broadcast regulation in place. That means they are blocking, but they don't have the VPN in place, so that everyone is using it.
Can we go back to slide 2?
Right? How much?
32. Yes.
Yeah.
So you were saying just now that what can be done to counter OTT is dependent on the move away from net neutrality. So my question is, in terms of that country, what are the factors which allow them to actually come away from this concept of net neutrality? Because the way I understand it, other countries they have anti-competitive sort of things. Is it that the countries that are doing this, they have really government-linked telcos, for example, in something like that?
You have several directions coming these things from. The net neutrality is a very old one. As mentioned, Mr. Obama demanded having, for example, for the United States. The European Union wants to have it. It is very classic. The question is only, what is net neutrality? So, there are two different definitions of it. The one definition is, I, as the retail customer, I am not discriminated. So, that means I have access, as everyone else, to the entire range of services. Under this, or as long as this kind of definition remains, I personally do not have a problem with violating net neutrality. There's a second definition, which is that net neutrality should not discriminate any OTT. So this, on the other side, to be honest, is a complete different picture.
So an example you're talking about is that Korea?
The example what I'm speaking about is that I do not have a problem to discriminate a company like an OTT, because these guys are making revenues. And why should, in case a national player is offering them a higher network transport service, why should they not contribute? So the issue, to be honest, where we are currently in is this, the fact that more or less all national players are over-provisioning the networks, and that actually no country worldwide, except of Africa a bit, that you have a proper best effort. Best effort would, in a strong sense, mean in a busy hour you have to suffer a bit. Are you suffering? No. Even in the busy hour, service quality is still quite good. Even in, come on, Malaysia has fantastic networks. So, but as long as the customer is not suffering, he will not prefer the network operator to invest in them. This is exactly the same. So as long as they have these good best efforts, you do not really need the motor or the data highway. So from an OTT perspective, right now it doesn't make big sense to pay. This is exactly the issue, what the operators are generating for themselves. On the one side, they think the customer will run away if I have a proper best effort. On the other side, as long as they don't have a proper best effort, they will never be able to charge Google. So, if you're big enough, like AT&T, they managed to make Google pay. And as mentioned, these kinds, there you can do some kind of regulation that would allow, let's say, start discriminating the OTTs. Yes, I don't have a problem with this. But if you're doing this, if you're allowing this,
But it's not regulation in the traditional sense. It's basically,
it would be even a regulation in the traditional sense, because if you are allowing the data highway, and that the operators suddenly start charging the OTTs, then it is your responsibility to make sure that they are not overcharging them. Because the operators here are having the ownership of the customer, and this is something which the OTTs usually never will have. So therefore, this is a very valuable good for the network operators, and it is as in the PSTN world, the transport has to be regulated in a very classical sense.
now we have this so-called bad guy OTT and good guy is a network. But what of the future now? We're going to have the Internet of Things coming in, and the data will be so much more. So this will be yesterday's news pretty soon with you, I don't know?
No. To be honest, no. First of all, I would never state that the network operators are the good guys.
Yeah, I'm just saying that they would say that
I was a network operator. I know how bad they are. The point here is even the Internet of Things, the principle behind is exactly the same. You need the transport layer underneath. As mentioned, service and transport are separated. Yeah? So they are managed differently. But nevertheless, everyone needs a transport. So if you are not guaranteeing on the one side for your retail customer, but also for the OTTs itself, that the charging is done from the transport, they are in most cases a monopoly. So if this guy starts overcharging, and you have a problem, this is where you have to step in. And they must, this transport layer, they must treat everyone in an equal way. That means the transport provider can offer different classes, but everyone of the OTTs must have access to these classes. They cannot just say, okay, I have done it with Google, but Yahoo, you are not allowed to get my high quality service. This cannot happen. And the second thing is the charging principle. If they are offering the data highway, then make sure that they are not overcharging it, because you would also harm the market. And on the other side, the basic principle is always the net neutrality from a consumer perspective. The consumer always must have access to everything, and there shouldn't be any kind of discrimination. This is very important.
Three things basically is pricing policy, it's access, and it's also consumer access.
Yeah. So, and with this, we're not doing anything today, anything else today. The principles will not change so much. We just have to study in what direction we have to apply. And mention this thing here, the cost model. This is the first funny experience we have right now. That more and more regulators start now asking us, have you ever done MGM cost? And do you know how to do cost allocation for different classes, quality of service classes? And the mechanism here are a bit different from what you have to classically. You must think a bit, but cost models are less. The other things, as mentioned, this access obligation, the quality of access